to you through the Better Sports Network. I am Dan Malin, and I am joined, as always, by the FSWA three-time NASCAR Writer of the Year, Matt Selz. And Matt, we are back for another road course for the second straight weekend with two races to go at Watkins Glen International. How are you feeling heading into this weekend? Last weekend was kind of odd. We've seen chaos and a lot of cautions previously at the last couple Indy road courses, and last weekend we had for the most part, a very green race, like in terms of like very long green flag runs. Was not expecting that, and Michael McDowell got his second career win in the Cup Series.
Yeah, when you have more than like 90% of that race run under green and it's straight, like Steve Letarte was like, we're going on an hour and 45 minutes of green flag racing. Like that, I don't think anybody expected it at Indy Road. It's like going into a Talladega race and watching it be caution free. Like
Right.
that doesn't happen really. So could we see more of the same this week at Watkins Glen? I fully expect that. I'm not sure that there's going to be any cautions unless somebody breaks part of their car, like on a curb, or just gets wonky going downhill in turn one. Other than that, I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot of cautions, if any, this week. So kind of assuming that. Like last week, we kind of built mostly for chaos with a little bit of, oh, well, what if it goes green? This week, we're doing mostly if it goes green and then a little bit of, well, perhaps there's some chaos.
Now, with just two races left in the regular season, we have Watkins Glen this week, road course. Next week is Daytona.
Yep.
Pretty wild way to end the season. You know, that's going to be the kind of race where anybody could win and punch their ticket into the postseason. Austin Dillon did that last year, I believe. But, you know, we look at the standings. Who are some drivers that are kind of like right on that bubble? I know Chase Elliott is probably – I think the general consensus is that he can't point his way in at this point.
Oh, he has to win at this point.
But same thing with Alex Bowman.
He's like 75 points back, I think.
Okay.
McDowell won, which crushed his point total.
So at this point, it's a win and you're in situation for Chase Elliott and a few other drivers. Who are a couple other drivers that could possibly be racing for points this weekend?
So the two main guys that we're focused on are the guys that are right on the bubble. Bubba Wallace is 16th in the points. He's 28 points to the good. Daniel Suarez is 28 points to the bad. So those two dudes are going to be battling it out on the racetrack. And, you know, as much as you want to say you dislike Bubba Wallace or he stinks or whatever, he's really good at Daytona. If he goes in with a points lead at Daytona, it may be pretty hard for Daniel Suarez to make that up. So I would expect Suarez to be doing everything possible to try to get a points lead on Bubba Wallace this week, as opposed to waiting for something. Obviously, anything can happen at Daytona, right? We've seen guys who have won 4 straight plate races wreck out in the first 6 laps of those races, right? But if Wallace goes into Daytona with a points lead, it might be pretty tough for Suarez to make it up. Now, could there be a new winner? Sure. It's Daytona. Anybody can win. And guess what? This year they got rid of the top 30 points rule. So if you win and you're outside the top 30 points and you're a full-time driver, you make the playoffs. Could that happen here? Sure. AJ Allmendinger is a guy that needs a win to make it at this point. Chase Elliott needs a win to make it at this point. You know, there's a couple other guys who are close to the points. And not having stage breaks is going to be very interesting to watch who chases points at stage ends and who doesn't.
Now, I guess just refocusing our attention back onto Watkins Glen. As you just said, no stage breaks. That was kind of brutal last week for DFS without any cautions. Do you think that we could see a relatively greener race for Watkins Glen? I think yes, just because I don't recall Watkins Glen having a ton of cautions. This isn't really like a super technical road course. It is almost 2.5 miles in length. It's got, you know, technically 11 turns, but there are some S's in there. And it's kind of like a broader, wide, sweeping road course, and you can complete a lap in about 70 to 72 seconds. So with no cautions at stage breaks, do we think that this could be a pretty clean race? And do we necessarily need to be going for so many drivers that are starting in the back, offering a bunch of PD? Because honestly, it's Kevin Harvick is in the exact same spot that he was in a week ago. His car was awful. He's not a good road course driver, and yet people are going to see the name and the fact that he's starting outside the top 30, and they're just going to want to plug him in again.
Yeah, I mean, you have to go back to 2016 at Watkins Glen for there to be more than 5 cautions in a race. Now, last year there were 5. However, 2 of those were stage breaks. So there are only 3 natural cautions. Before that, you had 4 cautions. So only 2 of those are natural cautions. And same thing. Like back in 2017, there's 3 cautions. Okay, this is not a track that produces a ton of cautions, typically speaking, unless there's weather, which we don't expect there to be weather issues. Okay, now, one thing that the green flags can do is readjust fuel mileage, which we have seen here in the past. We've seen fuel mileage races in the past. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Chase Elliott's first win came because Truex was running out of fuel and had to save, or ran out of fuel just before the end a few years ago. We've seen Kyle Larson pull off a fuel mileage win here. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that if it goes green, you're burning fuel at a faster rate than if you get some caution laps where you can save fuel. So keep that in mind. It might force a little bit more short pitting than we're used to seeing, but I agree. It's going to be pretty hard to pass. I think everybody on the broadcast, including some of the drivers, were saying, if this plays out like last week, qualifying is more important this week than last week because we know to expect a clean race, and it's tough to pass in green conditions unless you absolutely outwit somebody on pit road, which just doesn't really happen in the NASCAR Cup Series. So I agree. I'm not really a fan of the stack the back or try to go for massive PD here. I would say that generally speaking, I mean, again, if we go back to 2016, every winner since the 2016, including 2016, has come from the top 6 starting spots. So, and you had Larson win it from 4th or from 2nd last year, 4th the year before. Chase Elliott won it from the pole. He won it from 3rd the year before that. Truex won it from 3rd, and Hamlin won it from 6th. So, track position matters here. I don't think we're going to see people pit to give it up.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the top 6 because when we look at the top 6 for this race, we are looking at drivers like Denny Hamlin and William Byron, who are on the front row. Michael McDowell starts P3. Ty Gibbs starts P4, which is kind of interesting. And he won last week's Xfinity Series race at Indy, finished 12th last week in the Cup Series race. And then in the third row, we get Kyle Larson and AJ Allmendinger. So there are obviously drivers in great equipment, drivers that we've seen have a ton of success on road courses. Curious who you're landing on that who could be your pick to win this race, especially with Michael McDowell, who qualified P3 and his price got juiced all the way to 9,600 on DraftKings. Who would you say is probably the driver you think can pull out the win starting in the top 6, or would you want to expand it to the 4th row and maybe go with someone like Tyler Reddick, who has a very fast car?
I think we can find a winner from the top 6. Tyler Reddick does have a fast car, but I'm just a little iffy on his recent
Form
results and lack of consistency, if we want to put that out there. It's hard not to look at Byron and go, geez, that guy was lightning fast like every lap at practice. Like Denny had to put down the lap of his life to hold off Byron on the pole. Is basically how it came down, what it came down to. So that being said, I do think people will save the couple $100 and go with Byron over Hamlin.
I do agree, because even during practice, and I mentioned this before, so the broadcast noted that at the time, I think Byron had run maybe 10 laps. And if you took the average of his 10 laps, and he had run that average for all of his laps, he would have been 7th fastest compared to everyone else's fastest lap.
Right.
And so that just speaks to the consistent speed that his car has. And you hope that it shows up again on Sunday and, nothing bizarre happens. But at 8,800 for a guy that's starting on the front row who everyone has seen has speed, his ownership will be juiced extensively. I'm totally fine playing because, we don't also necessarily consider William Byron a great road course racer by any means, but you can't deny the speed.
I mean, he moved up 25 spots last week.
Yeah.
So he was the chalk play and he lived up to it. So, but by the way, what's up with DK? Like, William Byron was 8,900 last week at Indy Road. Started 39th, was everybody's favorite chalk play. Finished 14th, and his price went down by 100 this week. It went down. He put up 54 points and his price went down. I don't know. It's very interesting how they're calculating this stuff, but I think Allmendinger always has a shot on a road course. I know last week was a horrible week for him. It happens. Can't be great all the time, but he does have a win at Watkins Glen. He did look pretty quick in practice. He was getting after it pretty good. He does need a win to make the playoffs. He's not a guy who can point his way in. This is basically his last good shot to make the playoffs and make everybody forget about the stupid decision at Richmond. And you always got Ty Gibbs who could sit there and sneak a win and just sit there and keep pounding out. Like if it comes down to it, let's game this out, right? Let's say that Byron has faded a little bit down the stretch, right? And McDowell is what he is, okay. And Gibbs is challenging Denny Hamlin for the lead. Do you think that JGR invokes team orders like we see in F1? To give up the spot because Ty Gibbs doesn't have a spot in the playoffs and Denny does, and getting Ty Gibbs into the playoffs is valuable for JGR, knowing that Bubba, who's on the bubble, still has a shot at Daytona to get another Toyota into the playoffs.
I think it would be interesting, and I don't know if Denny
doesn't have a contract for next year right now for JGR.
Yeah, I don't know if Denny would necessarily. He doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that would go against team orders, but at the same time, like what? I also don't. He would be aggressively against it, obviously, but I also think that it would be interesting that JGR was in position to have. 2 drivers in the Xfinity Series championship race last year until Ty Gibbs punted his own teammate just so he could get a win after Gibbs was already locked into the championship for Phoenix. So I think that would be kind of ironic. But knowing that, who's to say he wouldn't move Denny Hamlin out of the way if this scenario did play out in front of our eyes?
I mean, he could, right?
Yeah, right.
Now he's fighting for a playoff.
He would cement himself as the ultimate villain. And I'm not saying like Denny Hamlin's beloved by people.
I mean, I don't know, man. I'd get some respect for Ty Gibbs if he punted Denny Hamlin out of the way. But you can't really fault Gibbs at that point because now he's fighting for a playoff berth rather than letting his teammate have a playoff berth so that he could have Ty Gibbs just wanted to win over. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not saying it plays out that way, but it'd be very interesting to see what would Denny make him.
It's a fun scenario.
Yeah.
So how are we just assuming that Chase Elliott and Martin Truex Jr. are cash game locks? They start 15th and 19th respectively. So okay. So we don't really need too much analysis. We kind of know that.
No, I mean everybody. I mean, Chase Elliott has 7 career road course wins. This is probably his last great shot for winning his way into. I mean, he could win Daytona, I guess. We've seen Hendrick do it before in the last race of the regular season. But this is his last best shot, and Truex won at Sonoma.
Yep.
And was pretty quick. Both guys were pretty quick last week at Indy Road. Chase, if that race had gone 2, maybe 3 laps longer, Chase Elliott probably wins that race over McDowell. He was catching him. So if you're starting with those 2 in a cash game, now we got to get tricky. You got to pick either Denny or or Byron. I'm not sure you're playing both in a cash game. You got to pick one to get you your laps led.
I'm probably going with Byron.
I'll probably go with Byron too. And then that's leaving us with $6,500 for the last three, like on average for the last three spots. This is where it gets interesting. So the pricing has been out since what, Tuesday evening, I think is when it dropped.
The consensus was that it was pretty aggressive and everybody liked it.
It was aggressive and it was tight. And now qualifying has happened and it got tighter. I didn't think it could, but it got like there is very slim pickings below 7,000 this week.
Yeah.
For guys that I trust on a road course. Like maybe and I'm not sure how many of them are cash game plays, to be perfectly honest.
I hate Harvick, not as a human being, but
Harvick's a lovely human being. But
yeah,
for this week, no go.
But I think if he just, and I said this before the podcast, I'm not playing him in tournaments because he's not good on road courses. The car was terrible in practice. But if he just does what he did last week and just kind of moves up throughout the race, he wasn't great last week, but he gained 15 spots of PD just by hanging out and driving around cars that were having issues. If he does that again, he's perfectly fine in cash games. So I'm fine in cash games. I don't like playing him in tournaments because I don't think there's much of a ceiling.
So I went and put two budget dudes in. And now for the last spot, I have $8,200, which does get us into the Harvick range. It also gets us Chastain, Bowman.
I would go Bowman.
You would do Bowman over Harvick.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had both Harvick and Bowman. I mean,
no,
I do like.
So the two budget guys I put in there were LaJoie and Austin Dillon.
Okay.
Which leaves one spot, and I've got $8,200, which puts us in the Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman, Logano, Harvick, Blaney, Briscoe, Keselowski, I guess Bubba.
Bowman is a good way to probably, assuming 50 to 60% of cash game lineups have Harvick. Bowman is probably my preferred pivot off him in that kind of contest because he finished fifth last week. We know he needs a win. He's even running the Xfinity Series race in about 15 minutes. We're recording this at about 3:15 on Saturday. So I don't hate Bowman just because I know that there is kind of a desperation play there, and he knows he either needs a win. He needs a win. A strong finish isn't going to do it for him. So I expect him to do anything he can to be gaining track position throughout the race.
Yeah, he finished third at Coda for what it's worth.
What's that?
I said he finished third at Coda, hung basically about where he started at Sonoma. Chicago, I'm not counting because that was just a cluster across the board for a lot of dudes.
Yeah.
So you would take. I also think that Bowman is an interesting pivot off of Chastain.
Is he though? Like, is Chastain gonna get that much exposure? He's been terrible since Nashville.
I mean, he finished second at Michigan and 17th last week.
Is that good?
No, I mean, no, not really. He put up 30 points last week on a road course. But people seem to really like Chastain for some reason.
I don't really know what's happened to that team, but since he won Nashville, they've just been – it's like, they're seniors in high school, and they are just coasting to the end of the year.
Yep, senioritis. He finished fourth at Coda. I mean, I don't know. I'm with you. I'm kind of iffy on Chastain, but I'm just saying there is history there that would, I think, intrigue people for 4 extra spots of PD for $200 extra bucks.
Sure, I get it, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm with you on Harvick and Cash if he can just coast it and basically pick up 15 spots in Cash are fine. In GPPs, I think there's no leverage in playing Kevin Harvick in a GPP, to be honest, because I mean, if you're gonna play Kevin Harvick, I'd rather take a shot that like Keselowski could figure it out, or Blaney could figure it out on a road course. Or heck, Eric Jones last week was just a weird week, and he's back to being a decent road course racer.
Yeah.
Like I'm with you on the lack of leverage for Kevin Harvick.
You know who I'm honestly kind of intrigued with this week? And I think he's going to be an interesting tournament play. And I completely had this guy off my radar in practice. But I'm really interested in Joey Logano because he is 7,800. Everybody that's priced around him starts behind him. And
yeah,
like no one's going to play him when they could go to Bowman or Harvick or even his teammate Ryan Blaney or Cindric. Like he starts P11 and he's 7,800, which is already too cheap for a driver of Logano's caliber. And started 20th in this race last year, finished third, won stage 2. The year before he won stage 1, but he started second in that race anyway. But he had a 114 driver rating, led 15 laps in this race a year ago. And that team will do something to put them in position in stage 3 to be running well. Now, obviously, if he has an issue, Rex, whatever, it's whatever. He's done.
You just need him not to be playing bumper cars like he was last week at Indy when the race started.
Yeah, but
he full sent it into turn 1 and bounced off 3 people, including his teammate.
Yeah, but he gets 45 points with no dominator points if he finishes top 5. No one's going to play him.
No, not. I don't think so. Not after last week's debacle. Yeah.
I would go ahead. Sorry.
You make a reasonable point that for a GPP now, am I playing him in cash? No.
Yeah, right. No, I agree.
Because there's a reasonable shot that he full sends it into turn 1 and he's going to finish 28.
Yeah.
Right. But if he holds his spot and moves up, let's say finishes 7th, there's enough points there.
Yeah. I want to. So let's probably rewatch practice. But
let's refresh what you look for in your drivers. You're not going for value this week because
correct.
The number of laps and the race flow distorts how you can look at value on a road course. You personally like to see 40 DK points from a driver?
I like getting 40 points minimum from each driver.
Right.
And obviously you need the winner. And if they lead laps and win the race, they're probably getting between 50 and 60 points. But I do like having, at minimum 40 points.
McDowell started 4th last week, won, had 54 laps left and put up 62 points in a similar length race to what we have on Sunday, which is last week's was 82 laps, this week's is 90. So, yeah, I'm with you. You can, that's a dominating performance. He led more than he led like 60% of that race.
Yeah, with only 2 fastest laps. It was insane.
Yeah, that's surprising. That tells you the car. It was more the track that was helping him than the car that was helping him. Because I bet you Chase Elliott had a bunch of fastest laps last week.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say Chase Elliott had 8 last week, 8 fastest laps. So,
what was that? Probably 10%. Well, Allmendinger had most of them because he had that issue early and then had an absolute rocket ship the rest of the race where he was running
21 fastest laps.
Yeah. All right. So now
he had 21 fastest laps and only scored 25 points.
Yeah.
Started and finished 26th.
But we get down to the value tier and it does get a little bit murky. This is where tournaments are probably going to be won and lost. Just nailing the right value plays that finish well. I think we're both on Austin Dillon, not in cash games, but 6,300, starting P16. He is kind of an unheralded and underrated road course driver. Started P27 last week and finished 16th. Obviously, doesn't have as much PD at his disposal this time around, but I think he has a top 10. I'm not going to guarantee it, but there's top 10 equity here with Austin Dillon, I think.
Yeah, he's posted he's finished top 10 in 20% of the road courses in the Gen 7 car. He also has a P11 in that span. He's been running fast enough to nail a couple others before fading a little bit. He ran well here last year, if memory serves. So yeah, he's got a shot. Another guy that intrigues me down in this part is Justin Haley.
Go on.
He ran a sneaky fast practice. Like, I know that that's not a lot to go on, but sometimes you got to do the eye test for that particular weekend and just say, screw it, we're rolling with like, there's not very many other options, to be perfectly honest. And Justin Haley had a terrible weekend, but I think part of that was Logano. Logano may have hit him. That may have been one of the guys that Logano hit. It was not a very good race weekend at Indy Road last week. He did have a very good Chicago road course, street course race. He ran decently at Sonoma. So, like,
he does have some good results on road courses in the Xfinity Series. He almost won the Indy road course, I think the first one they ever ran in the Xfinity Series. And hey, he was leading laps at Chicago, as bizarre as that race was. But like, I'm just of the mindset where I can't shake this thought in my head that the team isn't sabotaging him, but they're doing more to help AJ Allmendinger than him at this point.
I mean, sure, but his practice speed was better than 20th. His lap averages put him like...
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you there.
I mean, I want to see if NASCAR actually put their lap averages up this week because they failed at an epic level last week and never put practice lap averages up. So here we go. It looks like they are in fact up. So yeah, Allmendinger had the fastest overall lap average for sure. But if you do comparisons, Justin Haley's lap averages weren't all that bad. I think he gets docked because he had a couple of slow outlaps. But if you look at Nick Given's flags ratings, Justin Haley is right there with Ryan Blaney's speed, Alex Bowman, who we just talked about, a tick behind Chase Elliott. So I think there's some value here and a little bit of leverage on Justin Haley. I'm not fully behind it. I'm just saying we got to get weird in this range.
Right.
Everybody we like is above 8K. So you're going to have to get weird and get a little uncomfortable in your lineup building this week. Ryan Preece, no. Just, I don't care that he's starting in the 30s. No, he's a short tracker, not a road course racer. Mike Rockenfeller went out and qualified 21st. That's a little high for me to be playing him, to be perfectly honest. I was hoping that's where he would finish.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I don't know. You want to get really weird and pair like Eric Jones and Ricky Stenhouse together?
I don't.
Last week,
Jones had like a shifting issue or something very early, right?
Yeah.
I think I'd be okay going back to him.
I do too. Like, the logic was there to play him last week, and he's in
and it's there to play him again this week. And
right.
Speed be damned, like it just hasn't been there for that team. But he's moved up everywhere else. Like, it's a road course, and I don't associate Eric Jones with being a road ringer. But who knows? Like, he can move up and maybe steal a top 25, top 20 finish.
Yeah, I mean, his again, if we go back to Nick Giffen's flags, which thank you very much, Nick Giffen. If you guys aren't following RotoDoc on Twitter, you should be. It's a great follow.
Very good betting advice from that guy.
Yeah, he's also got a PhD in math. So anytime you bet with a formula, you should just trust it. He puts Eric Jones's speed kind of in the middle of the pack, like top 20 basically. So I'm fine with that. There's some PD there.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time this week. Best of luck to you and the FA Nation at Watkins Glen International. We'll be back next week to preview the season finale.